Good. Thanks a lot, Marco, also for the invitation to share my experience. And of course, feel free to ask any questions. So as Marco said, I was the co-director of one molecular innovation training network. So that was the Machine Learning Frontiers in Precision Medicine that ran between 2020 and 2024. And here our goal was to reveal new insights into disease mechanism and basically to foster precision medicine with machine learning and statistical approaches. So this was heavily driven by data scientists and machine learners and statisticians. I resumed my role was a co-director once Carsten Borgward, who was the first director, left ETH, so I took over his position. We had 14 early stage researchers, so 14 PhD candidates, and we had 14 research institutions from the public sector, so like universities mainly, and we had 6 companies from the private sector, and I listed all of them here. And I listed them also to show like we had a huge span of like smaller companies and larger companies. And all of these companies, I have to say, were very active and contributed to the success of this project, also in terms of discussions when there was discussion about IP and legal frameworks. That was very productive with these companies. And the status is actually so the network is officially completed. The majority of the PhD students successfully defended their thesis. There are 1 or 2 that are still ongoing just because they started later, because we had also some people who started and then stopped their PhD, and then we found new candidates. So that's why there are still some people that are working on their thesis. Here I just put the website, and I'm happy to share the slides if that is helpful for you, so that you can also look at the different partners and the different projects if you're interested in. Now, the main lessons, at least I learned from this network was actually, and also from the other experience as a member, is actually that the composition of the consortium, so the PIs, but also the collaborators, so where your PhD students will do their secondments, is very important for the success of not only the application, but also the completion of the project. And what I mean here is that every member should be able to contribute and also to interact with other members. And I will show it, this a bit more with the other consortium where we are in a different role. Then also the number of activities. So you're expected to have meetings and summer school and online courses for the PhD students. I suggest, or I would recommend to you that you keep this to a minimum, because while on paper it looks very nice if the PhD students meet every 6 months and they have online courses and they have opportunities to present, but in reality it's so much work for the PIs and for the PhD students. Plus, if you have international students, often they need a visa to travel to another country, and these are just, there's so much administrative burden related to that I think it would be less is actually more in that context, to have a few meetings, but then do them, for example, extended, like with summer schools, for example, but try to keep them to the minimum, because as far as I understand, so if you plan this in your proposal, the EU actually, or the funding body actually wants you to do this. There's no way out of this. So just be careful with the number of activities. Then also the choices of secondments, because you will have to define, or it's not definite, but you have to make a suggestion where your PhDs will do their secondments. And again, this is very important because I think it should align with their main PhD proposal. Of course, it can be a bit a side project, but it should fall in the line of their project. Otherwise, they will be too distracted. They have to learn, or they have to start. Sometimes they have to restart in a completely different field, and 3 months, which these secondments are typically, is just very short for that. So if you want to get most of it out of it, then the best it's actually to have it in line with their PhD theme at least. Then industry partners are very important, especially in our field, so in the machine learning and data science field, because it gives also the PhD students the opportunity to network and also to meet potential employers after their PhD. Not all of them will stay in academia, but this gives them also another side of the coin and to, as I said, to network and also to see how research is done in a non-academic setting. And then a good project manager is crucial. So in this MLFPM network, we had a fantastic project manager, and she did everything, because the administrative and organizational load of these training networks is very high for the organizing or the leading PI. So get yourself a very good project manager who can take off many of these things, because you have to organize summer schools meeting and so on, but there's also a lot of administrative reporting, and yeah, it just takes a lot of time. And Mark, I added this point because you need to have funding for the 4th year for a PhD, because as Marco said, typically they only fund the first 3 years, and you have to make sure that you have money for the 4th and the 5th year. And this might be particularly difficult for junior faculty members. This is just something to consider. And like Carson, and if I would run such a training network again, I would actually make sure that I have the confirmation of all the PIs that they have funding for the 4th year, just to make sure that all the PhD students have secured funding for the entire duration of their PhD. But again, having said that, this is difficult for junior faculty, like assistant professors like myself. Now, the second network that is currently running is the Rewire network. And this started 2023. And here the goal is to identify technology-driven combinatorial therapy to rewire the spinal cord after it has been injured. And here I'm a member and a supervisor of 1 PhD students. We have in this network 16 PhD students. And in this network, we have leading institutions in basic research. So it's basic wet lab and bench work in the field of spinal cord injury, rehabilitation, and engineering. And we have 1 clinical partner, and that is us. So with the University Hospital Balgrist, we are actually the clinical partner. And I highlight this because I will show you what this actually meant for us. The status is ongoing. And the lessons here are actually, again, the composition of the consortium is very important. And I said here, don't be the odd one. So don't be the only clinical partner, because that's exactly the role we are in right now. So we are the only clinical partner in a consortium full of preclinical collaborators. And this makes it inherently difficult to find placements for the consortium, but also for the PhD student to find their own place in this doctoral network, because they're so far away from each other. Like, she's a data scientist, a machine learner by training, and everyone else is more on the basic science or engineering. So there's not much overlap, and this caused some troubles, I would say. So, and I have to say, like in defense of the consortium, so the Rewire, they submitted this once, and one of the criticism was that they don't have a clinical partner. So they added a clinical partner, and it was funded. But again, now we're in this situation that you have 13 partners and 1 odd clinical partner that does not really fit together very well. And again, on paper, it looks very nice, but in practice, this is a bit difficult or challenging. Also, the number of activities, as I said, in this network, we have way too many activities. It's very time consuming. And as well, like depending on where these activities take place, our student always has to get a visa. Sometimes, like one time she was denied a visa, she couldn't participate. So these are just things you have to consider, especially if you have PhD students from third states members. Choice of secondments. So again, here, because we were the only clinical collaborator that works with clinical data, we actually had to add a new partner in the US in order to make sure that our PhD student can actually benefit from her secondment, because again, she's like 6 months away from us. It's part of her PhD. But none of the other labs actually fit, because she would have gone to the bench work, and that just didn't fit with her PhD goals and the research focus we have. So again, make sure that you think about the secondments early on and have a good plan how this fits into their PhD. And I'm not saying they shouldn't learn a new skill, but if you have to learn how to do animal research in 3 months, if you are a data scientist, I mean, it's basically, I don't know, teaching how to do a surgery if you have never heard of medicine before. Yeah. And so the other learnings, of course, the manager, also in this network, we have an excellent project manager that helps us a lot with the administrative part. But yeah, this is, I think it's very important to have good support. And that's actually already the end of my story. And I'm happy to take any questions or remarks.